Today is Tuesday, November 19th, 2024. So tomorrow is November 20th. We would have about 11 days left. So we are past the two-thirds of November. Soon it will be December and the end of the year and the rolling of New Year coming up soon. So it will be business as usual, but I want to make more money by going into international trade, right? Right after my retirement. I'm not sure when, but officially it's 4 years from now. But I would like to have a job in America, North America, right? Or any English speaking countries. And also, if I don't get the job, I probably have to make money on my own, and international trade comes to my mind, or as a tour guide, because I can speak English and Chinese, right? And to keep up with my English competency level, I always try to read an English article each day, regardless of whether it's a weekday or weekend. By speaking English on your own, because you are a non-English speaking, non-English native, you get to practice English, and also you get to move muscles in your face, in your head, so that it's more like a massage or a facial exercise, so that your face would be more relaxed, flexible, and happy and malleable. And also by reading an English article aloud, you get to tone up your voice, your vocal cord, so that your voice would be nice and smooth and suave and beautiful, right? So it's a multi-purpose effort and multi-benefits that you get from reading an English article each day. Same with other foreign language. Your own native language, probably not. Not many people will get to read their own language article every day. It's quite difficult. But when it comes to a foreign language, you can do it, right? So French, Russian, Chinese, Spanish, doesn't matter, Korean, yep. Whatever you can grab on, you can read on, right? And this article is from Canada, right? This one is FCC Knowledge / Economics. And the title is Understanding Agriculture and Food Trade, an overview. Agriculture is quite easy trade, in my opinion, because you don't require much knowledge about the grain you are trying to import or export, as versus to machinery or arms, right? Missiles, airplanes, or high-tech gadgets like semiconductor machines. So this article will be 6.5-minute read, and the title is Understanding Agriculture and Food Trade, an overview. Since I am Korean and I work for Korea Telecom KT, the number one carrier in Korea, it will be like double the amount. So it will be 30-minute read, probably 16-minute read, because occasionally I will stop along the way and try to repeat the sentence, phrase, words, expressions several times to memorize them on the spot, right there, right? So it will take some time. Along the way, I will highlight those expressions that I determine to be useful, right? It's my own judgment, right? Canada is a trading nation, especially in agriculture and food, where we grow and produce more than we can consume domestically. In 2019, Canada ranked 5th among global agriculture commodity exporters, who have 5th. Agriculture and food exports combined totaled $67 billion, I think Canadian dollars. Overall, AAFS, right, estimates that over 50% of Canadian agricultural production is exported directly or processed to be exported. Some commodities, such as, well, 50%, over 50%, they produce a lot of commodity, right? Agricultural commodity. Some commodities, such as red meat, cereal grains, and pulse crops, are very trade dependent. Cereal grains, red meat, cereal grains, pulse crops. What is pulse crops? Pulse crops, pulsation, right? Pulse. Sawtooth pulse, triangular pulse. What is pulse crops? While others, particularly in the supply-managed industries of dairy and poultry, serve the domestic market predominantly. Canada is a major exporter and importer of agriculture and food products. Really? They import a lot too? In 2019, we had a surplus in agricultural and food trade of $14.9 billion. Food surplus was around $741 million. However, in previous years, the food trade was in a deficit when considered in isolation. Right? A surplus, right? Surplus, something is left to go around people. Surplus, in deficit, quite an opposite terms. They had a surplus in agricultural and food trade. Why Canada stands out as an agriculture and food exporter? Our dominant export position is due to our competitiveness and ability to sell high-quality products at an attractive price to foreign buyers. Our endowment in natural resources, water and land, and overall productivity are key drivers of export performance and success. For example, we can increase export volumes using more production factors, planting more acres, hiring more labor, changing feed rations, etc. And each option means, those are all of production factors. Each option means we can warrant higher expenditures if this output value grows faster than costs. Increasing productivity raises our ability to find success in export markets. Productivity, right? Increasing productivity. Each option means we can warrant higher expenditures if this output value grows faster than costs. We can warrant higher expenditures. That's good expression. Each option means we can warrant higher expenditures if this output value grows faster than costs. Increasing productivity raises our ability to find success in export markets. Other variables that businesses sometimes have very little control over also influence success. One example is currency values. Depreciation in Canadian dollar values makes our products more competitive for foreign buyers. Logistics matter. Generally, ocean bulk freight, right? Canadian depreciation in Canadian dollar values makes our products more competitive for foreign buyers. Exactly the same with any other country. Depreciation in Canadian dollar, logistics matter. Generally, ocean bulk freight is less expensive than containerized ocean movement, and both are far more economical than rail freight. However, for medium to long inland transport, rail is more economical than trucking. Economical than trucking. However, for medium to long inland transport, medium to long, right? For medium to long inland transport, rail is more economical than trucking. Yeah, I gotta remember this, man. Generally, ocean bulk freight is less expensive than containerized ocean movement, and both are far more economical than rail freight, rail freight, ocean freight, ocean bulk freight, rail freight, less expensive than containerized ocean movement. Both are far more economical than rail freight. However, for medium to long inland transport, rail is more economical than trucking. Ocean freight from Canada's west and east coasts provides relatively inexpensive access to many importing nations. However, Australia still has a clear logistical advantage when selling to China, while Russia has a clear transportation advantage when moving products into much of Europe. Superior quality, reliable deliveries, and customer loyalty also figure into the equation. But transportation costs can loom large. That's one of the reasons why the US is Canada's largest trading partner. They are next door, and the countries share a long, relatively open border, right? The US is Canada's largest trading partner. They are next door. They are next door, right? Figure into the equation. Superior quality, reliable deliveries, and customer loyalty also figure into the equation. But transportation costs can loom large. Transportation costs can loom large. I gotta remember that. Transportation costs can loom large. Superior quality, customer loyalty, and reliable deliveries also figure into the equation. Transportation costs can loom large. The US is Canada's largest trading partner, and they are next door. And the countries share relatively long open border. Market diversification is important. When trade disagreements arise or if a market dries up, it's important to have alternative customers. There is an inherent risk of relying too much on one customer or country. There is an inherent risk of relying too much on one customer or country. There is an inherent risk of relying too much on one customer or country. So there is an inherent risk of relying on just one partner, relying too much on one customer or country. Developing new markets involves establishing relationships with buyers, requiring time, effort, and resources. For instance, if anything happened to disrupt the American market for Canadian oat producers, and the grain buyers exporting oats might wish other market opportunities were available. But that's difficult to divert product from your best paying customer to a lower paying market as insurance against the possibility of market disruption during good times. For instance, if anything happened to disrupt the American market for Canadian oat producers and the grain buyers exporting oats might wish other market opportunities were available, but that's difficult to divert the product from your best paying customer to a lower paying market as insurance against the possibility of market disruption during good times. The old saying is, don't put all your eggs in one basket, but developing new markets involves establishing relationships with buyers, and that requires time, effort, and resources. It may take initial export success in one market before expanding in another markets. Trade commissioner services can provide support to smaller businesses looking to enter new markets. However, diversification isn't always feasible or possible. For example, Canada's largest food export is baked goods, and 95% of exports go to the US due to proximity and the limited shelf life of these perishable products. Due to the limited shelf life of these perishable products, these perishable products, these perishable products, these perishable products. America is also the dominant destination for Canadian hog, beef, and red meat exports. However, it's interesting to note that beef products such as liver, tongue, and hides find higher value markets in other nations such as Japan and South Korea. Yes, we like cow liver, tongue, and hides because we'd like to make belts or jackets out of cow hides, and also we eat cow liver. Tongue, I don't know about that. Trade agreements open opportunities. The various trade agreements can seem a bit like alphabet soup. There's a CUSMA, the Canada-United States-Mexico Trade Agreement, which replaced NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement. Alphabet soup, like alphabet soup, right? Alphabet soup. Recently, Canada has also signed onto CETA, the Comprehensive Economic Trade Agreement with the European Union. Then there's a CPTPP, which is the Comprehensive and Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership involving 11 signatories: Canada, Japan, Singapore, Australia, Mexico, New Zealand, Brunei, Chile, Malaysia, Peru, and Vietnam. Through the 80s and 90s, much effort was expended on world trade agreements. While there's still a World Trade Organization, bilateral and multilateral trade agreements have recently been completed, replacing a single agreement covering scores of nations. While the scope of trade agreements that benefit Canadian exporters has expanded, there are other ongoing negotiations or considerations to develop free trade agreements. That is, United Arab Emirates, Thailand, India, UK, and Caribbean community. Seem like an alphabet soup, right? A lot of the various trade agreements can seem a bit like alphabet soup. The various trade agreements can look a bit like alphabet soup. The various trade agreements can seem a bit like alphabet soup. The various trade agreements can seem a bit like alphabet soup. Reducing tariffs in importing nations is positive for Canadian exports. Trade agreements involve much more than just agriculture and food. The overall purpose is to reduce barriers and facilitate trade, right? Reduce barriers and facilitate trade. The overall purpose is to reduce barriers and facilitate trade. Yeah, the overall purpose is to reduce barriers and facilitate trade. Countries within a trade agreement generally give preferential treatment to each other, this often takes the form of lower tariffs, which makes our exports more competitive relative to another supplier that doesn't enjoy similar preferential access. Another supplier that doesn't enjoy similar preferential access. Effective tariffs on Canadian exports can be easily retrieved from the Export Development Canada Tariff Finder. Non-tariff trade barriers are increasingly important. Tariffs are not the only policy influencing trade flows. Non-tariff barriers such as sanitary measures and inspection requirements can also play a major role in facilitating or impeding trade. Tariffs are not the only policy influencing trade flows. Non-tariff barriers such as sanitary measures and inspection requirements can also play a major role in facilitating and impeding trade. CETA is a good example. Canola imports by the EU require environmental impact documentation, or the EU will only import beef products from certified farms with fully inspected cattle for antimicrobial use. Maximum residue limits, MRLs, are another example. They vary from country, which introduces uncertainty for exporters. I think they vary from country to country, right? Maximum residue limits, MRLs, they vary from country, which introduces uncertainty for exporters. Codex, an international initiative, is meant to do research and provide MRLs that countries can use for their evaluations. Unfortunately, Codex evaluations don't exist for many chemical compounds, and countries often ignore Codex recommendations even when they do exist. In this way, MRLs can be a non-tariff trade barrier. Maximum trade limits, MRLs, are another example. They vary from country to country, which introduces uncertainty for exporters. Codex, an international initiative, is meant to do research and provide MRLs that countries can use for their evaluations. Unfortunately, Codex evaluations don't exist for many chemical compounds, and countries often ignore Codex recommendations even when they do exist. In this way, MRLs can be a non-tariff trade barrier. Other phytosanitary concerns also have a history of becoming non-tariff trade barriers. including growth promoters used in meat production, weed seeds in grain shipments, and trace amounts of non-registered genetically modified grains. Trace amounts of non-registered genetically modified grains, right? Weed seeds in grain shipments, growth promoters used in meat production, weed seeds in grain shipments, and trace amounts of non-registered genetically modified grains. Other phytosanitary concerns also have a history of becoming non-tariff trade barriers, including growth promoters used in meat production, and weed seeds in grain shipments, and a trace amount of non-registered genetically modified grains. Phytosanitary, right? Phyto means fire, right? I will look up phytosanitary. Phytosanitary may refer to phytosanitary certification by phytosanitary inspection. Phyto, plant, vegetation. Oh, okay, phyto. I thought fire, but it's it has something to do with the plant, vegetation, flora, right? Flora. Fauna is for animals. Flora is for plants. Phyto. Plants are the eukaryotes. They form the kingdom of Plantae. They are predominantly photosynthetic. This means that they obtain their energy from sunlight using chloroplasts derived from endosymbiosis with cyanobacteria to produce sugars from carbon dioxide and water using the green pigment chlorophyll. Phytosanitary. So other phytosanitary concerns also have a history of becoming non-tariff trade barriers, including growth promoters in red meat and weed seeds in grain shipment, and trace amount of non-registered genetically modified grains. Here, trace amounts means very little, only enough amount to be a trace agent, right? Trace amounts of non-registered genetically modified grains. Politics and trade. Most economists believe unrestricted trade contributes to overall wealth because countries tend to produce and export their products where they have a comparative advantage. However, there's also a push within many countries for food autonomy. They don't want to rely too heavily on other nations for such a basic human necessity. Using India as an example, India has millions of farmers, mostly operating on small holdings and struggling to make a living and feed their families. They mostly operating on small holdings, right? That's good expression. Mostly, same with Korea. Mostly operating on small holdings. India's government is often caught balancing its farmers' needs with food affordability for its large population. Thus, India sometimes takes measures to limit pulse crop imports, which has a large impact on Canadian lentils and peas. In 2016, India's pulse crop imports were worth over $1.1 billion and accounted for over 40% of Canada's yellow pea and red lentil exports. I think a pulse crop is more like a pulse, right? Pulsation, right? Pulse. It's not a constantly imported crop. It's more like you just import onions when suddenly your the climate nationwide was bad and very low production of onions. So you got to import crops, the onions, on a need basis, pulse crop. That's what I think, right? But I could be wrong. So let's find out what a pulse crop is. Pulse crop. Legume? What are pulse crops? Pulses are a leguminous crop that are harvested solely for the dried seed. Dried beans, chickpeas, lentils, and peas are the most commonly known and consumed types of pulses. These little nutrition nuggets play a huge role in healthy diets in countries all over the world. Pulse producer information. Pulses are leguminous crop that are harvested solely for the dry seed. Pulses. What are the 10 pulses? Pulse crop. Is peanut a pulse crop? What is a pulse vegetable? Interesting. What are pulses? Pulses are the edible seeds of plants in the legume family. Pulses grow in pots and come in a variety of shapes, sizes, and colors. Pulses. Okay, I got it. I didn't know. That's interesting. Probably I've never heard of the pulses before, right? Wrong? Yeah. Where were we? Yeah. Thus, India sometimes takes measures to limit pulse crop imports, which has a large impact on Canadian lentils and peas. In 2016, India's pulse crop imports were worth over $1.1 billion and accounted for over 40% of Canada's yellow pea and red lentil exports. In 2018, quantitative import restrictions were placed on peas and tariffs on both peas and lentils dramatically reduced trade, impeded trade, reduced trade. Unfortunately, a Chinese demand emerged for Canadian peas, and they became the largest export market for the crop. Alternative market. Don't put all the eggs in one basket, right? At around the same time, due to a diplomatic dispute, China cut back on Canadian canola imports, banning sales from a couple of the largest grain companies. Some of the displaced Canadian canola went to Europe for biodiesel production, compensating for reduced European rapeseed production to the United Arab Emirates. Right? Interesting. Trade is vital for both exporting and importing nations. Without trade, Canadian agriculture sectors would be dramatically smaller, with a huge loss in economic activity and jobs. And many more countries around the world would struggle to feed their people. Every commodity relies on different export markets and has different trade nuances. That's why understanding the trade dynamics, yeah, I think dynamics is the correct one instead of dynamic, right? Trade dynamics for the commodities you produce can be a valuable planning tool. That's why understanding the trade dynamics for the commodities you produce can be a valuable planning tool. Want to learn more about trade? Check out FCC Trade Rankings 2020 report. Watch FCC Chief Economist JP Gervais talks trade. Read Understanding Trade Issues, Implications for the Farm. Very good. Up next, Understanding Trade Issues, Implications for the Farm. Learn why it's important to keep trade patterns, restrictions, and requirements top of mind, even if it feels removed from the farm gate. This is essentials, understanding agriculture and food trade overview. Why you should care about economics on the farm, how global currency and Canadian dollar impact agriculture, interpreting interest rate fluctuations, understanding supply and demand, farmland values influenced by many factors, understanding trade issues, implications for the farm, loan essentials, from cash flow planning to net worth statements, get the basics you need to prepare for the loan application. Check it out. About FCC Korea's corporate profile. Yeah, FCC looks like a very good company. If you need to hire a good man like me, always don't hesitate to contact me anytime. In the middle of the night, I could receive your call and shout, fuck it, but that's just joking. Yep, I'm very versatile and also well-versed and quite frank and down to earth. And I'm very smart and intuitive and also very creative. I've done a lot of jobs inside KT, the #1 carrier in Korea. And I was with the US Army for 2 years. And I am a top 10% graduate of PLDC, that's Primary Leadership Development course for sergeants. Before I close this article for the day, there are several expressions that I would like to go over and remember one more time. Pulse crops is a leguminous crop, right? They are harvested purely for dry seeds, no biodiesels, pulse crops. And there is an inherent risk of relying too much on one customer or country. The US is one of the largest Canadian exporters, trade partner, and they are just next door. There could be a phytosanitary barriers, which can be a non-tariff barrier, right? Like a weed disease in grain shipment, trace amounts of genetically modified crops, right? Trace amounts of negligible genetically modified crops is other things can impede trade, restrict trade. So before let me go over the article real quick. Cereal grains, red meat, cereal grains, pulse crops are very trade dependent. Surplus, right? Deficit. The food trade was in a deficit when considered in isolation. factors, right? Comparative. Yeah, rail freight. However, for medium to long inland transport, rail is more economical than trucking. Rail is more economical than trucking, right? Rail freight, ocean bulk freight is more economical. So rail is more economical than trucking. And Australia has clear logistical advantage, right? Superior quality and reliable deliveries and customer loyalty also figure into the equation. But transportation costs can loom large, right? Superior quality, reliable deliveries, and customer loyalty also figure into the equation, but transportation costs can loom large. They are next door. There is an inherent risk of relying too much on one customer or country. Yeah, perishable goods, perishable. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Limited shelf life of these perishable good products. Higher value markets in other nations. Yeah, the various trade agreements look a bit like alphabet soup. The various trade agreements look a bit like alphabet soup. Define. Alphabet soup may refer to a common dish made from alphabet pasta, alphabet soup linguistics, a metaphor for an abundance of abbreviations or acronyms. Alphabet soup, ultimate frisbee, a mixed European ultimate frisbee team, alphabet soup, right? A common dish made from alphabet pasta, alphabet soup, linguistics, a metaphor for an abundance of abbreviations or acronyms. A bit like alphabet soup. Give a preferential treatment. That doesn't enjoy similar preferential access. MRLs, right? MRLs. Other phytosanitary concerns also have a history of becoming non-tariff trade barriers, including growth promoters in red meat, weed seeds in grain shipments, and trace amounts of non-registered genetically modified grains. wheat seeds in grain shipments, and trace amounts of non-registered genetically modified grains. Food autonomy, right? Food autonomy. Lentils and peas. Canola imports, right? Canola imports. Without trade, facilitate trade. That's why understanding the trade dynamics for the commodities you produce can be a valuable planning tool. That's why understanding the trade commodity dynamics for the commodity that you produce can be a valuable planning tool. Well, that's it. Thanks for listening. Have a wonderful Tuesday evening, wherever you are. Be nice to each other and don't fight. Bye-bye.